What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we're going to get into a few things later on, including the Media Create sales charts that are a little surprised. I think some of you guys will be a little surprised at how some of the stuff shaked out when it comes to game sales and when it comes to system sales in terms of volume for either. We also got to talk about Smash Bros. Because Sakurai actually had a very interesting interview with Famitsu that kind of gives us an idea as to how he wanted to approach it and even when he started working on it, which is pretty cool to see. And of course, we're going to talk a bit about Mario Tennis as the embargoes did lift, and we're kind of seeing how everyone is viewing the next Mario Tennis game after what was pretty much an absolute terrible Mario game on the Wii U. First, though, let's talk a bit about Sony. Okay, so Sony's crossplay situation with Fortnite has really started to annoy people, right? At this point, you have to make a whole new account, you won't be able to get all your stuff, and then crossplay has been ongoing where Sony's been kind of blocking off for quite some time. And honestly, I get the whole crossplay thing, I've talked about this. Sony's far enough ahead to where they don't have to care. The locking down of a third-party account is very off to me. That one's a little weird. So, of course, we're all looking for why. We're looking for reasons as to why this is happening. Well, John Smedley, who actually ran Sony Online Entertainment, where they did like Planet Side 2, for example, they did have to deal with things with crossplay, or just in general, they had inner rumblings that they could hear and talk to people about to see what the deal was. And they say that it just really boils down to what else in the corporate world but money. That is really it. And yeah, I don't know why people are so surprised. Money? Yeah. It's a corporation, you know, everything's about money. Think of your favorite corporations right now, whether it's a Microsoft or a Nintendo or whoever. It's about money, right? They have investors to go report to constantly. Sony seems to view this as, we have so many people that they're locked in. So we're going to get their money no matter what, because they're not going to use their PlayStation 4 to go play with their friend that has an Xbox or a Switch. They can play with their friend who has a PC, but we're not going to help those around us because we're so far ahead. I've always said this, though. We'll see what happens next generation if things flip a bit, because something I've been noticing for a little while now, I think other people are as well, Microsoft's playing the long game right now, and I'm going to be curious to see what happens when Sony maybe doesn't have this massive head start next generation. We'll see about that one. Also, if you missed out on Limbo or Inside, they are coming to the Nintendo Switch June 28th. If you're going to check at least one of them out, I like both. Limbo I thought Limbo was pretty good, but Inside is something else. I would check that one out no matter what. That is a game that had heavy critical acclaim. Seriously, we have it had like 10 out of 10s a couple places, 9 out of 10s, and it is a very unique experience. They do a lot with a little, as well, at least tell you. And go in, I think, as blind as you can when it comes to, you can look up Let's Plays and stuff. Don't do any of that. Jump in without knowing anything about this game. I think we'll get a better experience out of it that way. My personal opinion on that one, because I do know if I watched someone else play it, it would probably have ruined some of the things for me. It's an awesome game. I would check it out, coming later on this month, June 28th. You can pick up either Limbo or Inside, or hey, you can pick up both. Next up, let's talk about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. That, of course, had a big blowout at E3. We saw everything. Everyone's back. All these characters. I think we're up to 65 technically right now from full-on playable characters. We're up to 65. But, of course, we want to know more. And it looks like we're getting more at some point, as they tell us that there are more surprises to come. Well, Masahiro Sakurai did sit down with Famitsu, and then Nintendo Everything took that article, that whole interview, and actually translated it to English. And there were some very interesting little bits in there of information as to when and kind of how they came to the determination that Smash Bros. Ultimate would be the next installment. And he basically talks about how in 2015, he started development, or at least started proposals and everything, and he decided between two different ones. It was either going to be a new entry, or it was going to be what we have now, which, while still technically a new entry, as even Sakurai himself says, is technically an extension of the last Smash Bros. Game, right? It's going to be different because he said he's changed some things up, whether it's damage that is given to different people depending on the crowd around you, or even says he made it so you fly off the screen faster, the tempo's faster. He does also seem to talk about the 3DS version kind of I guess, having to rein in some of his expectations with, because the 3DS, of course, was a technical limitation for a lot of things. That's why apparently we didn't have ice climbers, for example. And now that that has kind of been pulled out of the mix, he's pretty much allowed to do what he wants, and that's why everyone's in there. Now, Sakurai also goes on to say that, well, if we didn't do it this way, the roster size would probably be like a third of the size. They wouldn't have 65, maybe 70, depending when we're at the end here when it releases. I think we're going to see some people kind of show up here as well, by the way. But he says the roster size would probably be a third, a quarter of the size, just because you have to start redesigning everyone from scratch, and it's a lot more work that way. Now, he did, of course, go through and refine and change people up depending on the tempo and other things that he's changed. But this at least sounds like, the way I keep saying it, one of the best $60 you can spend in terms of value, in terms of how many people, characters are going to be in here, stages. This is the most they've ever had in terms of stages and everything. He's saying to himself here in the article. Very cool to see. If you want to read through this more, I will leave a link to the translated version to Nintendo Everything down in the description. I do say, if you're a fan of Smash or you're really looking for any information you can get, go check this one out. It's definitely a good read. Next up, let's talk about Mario Tennis, a game I'm really excited to get my hands on tomorrow. Isn't that cool? It's coming out tomorrow. That's great. I'm really excited for it because I'm more looking forward to for the multiplayer aspect. But there's also a full single player this time, which is something we desperately missed on the Wii U, and it wasn't a good game back then on the Wii U, right? This looks like the game that people on the Wii U really wanted. They just now have to buy a Switch to play it. But anyway, the embargo did at least lift a few days before now. Yesterday it lifted. And right now it's sitting at about a 78 on Metacritic. It can go up and down since the time of this recording. But it's right under an 80 essentially, which honestly, for a tennis game like that, that's actually not too bad. There are some that are really excited about the game, giving it like a 9.5 out of 10. Others are a little more lukewarm on it with 6s and 7s out of 10. It also depends on people's scales, which is why, to be honest, I think the whole number system is dumb in the first place. But still, this game looks like the tennis game that I want. But I do understand the criticisms that are coming out here because I myself said them. Things like having your racket broken apparently happens more often than you would think. It's actually pretty easy to do from one side to the other, whereas if you're receiving and you're trying to stop it from breaking a racket, it can be a little frustrating. They even said they run off, like I did. I just ran off the court and I ended up winning because if I had my racket broken, even though I'm so far ahead, I lose automatically. Now, of course, there is a mode where you can turn all of that off if you want to play vanilla tennis, which is something, believe it or not, I'm actually looking forward to doing. But I do look at this as something that is going to be a fun party game. They do say the campaign is good, but not overflowing with content, if that makes sense to you. Good, but not a ton of stuff. Now you do level stuff up and everything, and rackets get leveled up, all that, but it's not like a deep RPG system. I would probably say it's not going to be as deep as even the Game Boy Color version. That was a cool RPG, by the way, back then. But either way, it's the game I want. It's a tennis game that looks great with the Mario mix, and I'm glad it's not what the Wii U one was, which was, that was the waste of money. Next up, let's talk about the Media Create sales charts from last week. It's the 11th to the 17th. And, well, you're going to be a little surprised about some of these results, namely the Xbox One. We're going to talk about the Xbox One. This might surprise some of you. It's not a massive jump or anything like where we see with other ones, but it's still interesting to see because they've technically, I guess, jumped, 5 times or so in a week. It's pretty cool to see because that is technically, I think, the E3 effect. And you're going to see the software, it's going to be a little lower. But let's jump into this right here, starting with the number 1 spot at Splatoon 2. And you're going to see this is a lower than normal sales chart because the number 1 tracking game was 15,715. Fate Extella right below that on the PS4. Then we have a new entry for the PS4 at number 3. Record of Grand Crest War, and that's a Bandai Namco game at 11,871. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Kirby Star Allies, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Detroit Become Human, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And we have Fate Extella, that's on the PlayStation Vita. And then rounding out the top 10, that's Super Mario Odyssey. I want to jump down here for a second to a simultaneous release for the Nintendo Switch and the PS4. It's a smaller one, I will say that. But number 15 and number 17 slot kind of come in as God Wars Nihon Shinwa Taisen, and it released on both. However, you can kind of see how the install base for the Switch seems to be taking control here for some of these simultaneous releases. For example, this game actually sold better on the Nintendo Switch than it did on the PS4, despite the PS4 still having a better install base at this time. That's probably going to change, honestly, by the end of the year. But the PlayStation 4 version actually sold 2,649, and then the Switch version sold 2,967. Now, this has nothing to do with big sales or anything. It's just something to keep an eye on for these simultaneous releases coming up, as it might look a little different now than it did months ago. Moving over to the hardware side, Nintendo Switch at the top, 48,062. That's up a little over 7,000 units from last week. The PlayStation 4 dropped a bit, about 1,500 or so from the week prior. It's sitting at 25,138. The 3DS is actually up roughly 200 units to just over 7,000. The Vita dropped almost 1,000 units down to about 3,000. And the Xbox One. Look at this system. I'm actually a little surprised here because it definitely jumped roughly 6 times or so, and that's up to 786 systems. I kind of attribute that to the post-E3 boost, maybe. Maybe people actually saw the stuff that were happening on, I guess, Microsoft stage and ran out and bought one. This is actually a significant jump for the Xbox in Japan. It's not for any other system, trust me, but the Xbox in particular, a system that has not fared well at all in Japan, that is a pretty sizable jump. That definitely means somebody took notice of the Xbox, and while the mass population did not there, still interesting to keep an eye out. So we do see the Switch, obviously, status quo, somewhere between 40 and 50,000 units pretty consistently now, is kind of pretty much sprinting at it passing the PS4 later on this year, as I've said several times. Pokemon coming out in November is really, I think, going to be that last big push, along with Smash in December, to really push it over that mark. And that would be very impressive for this system to do it that quickly. I mean, seriously, it would do it in less than 2 years. It would be passing the PS4 in Japan, and that means it would have had to have sold over, what, 6.5 million, almost 7 million then to do that, and that is, well, that's something. And our last bit of news, let's talk about Crackdown 3, because this has been an interesting project. Let's be honest here. This has been something else, back from 2014 to now, and we hope it's coming in February. I think at this point, people just want to play the game and see if it's going to be any good, right? It's been in development for what feels like a long time, almost this entire generation, I think, right? It's been very close, if not. So, of course, people are asking and asking what's going on. Well, it turns out they've at least dropped off one studio. Now, if you don't know, Crackdown's made up by a whole host of studios working on this thing. Someone's working on the multiplayer, someone's working on the campaign, you got people working on other aspects like just design. Well, it looks like they're downsizing a little bit, maybe because they're finishing up with their contracts or they just don't need them. But this is actually in an interview with Matt Booty and Polygon saying, "We're just working with Sumo Digital right now. That's our main development partner, and as you know, I'm sure you know, any game has got a number of folks that come in to help us with content and some development, but Sumo is our main partner on Crackdown." And he's referring to Radiant Games as David Jones, they design and everything. I have a feeling that they are pretty much finished up, and that's why they're not really there anymore. Sumo Digital is like working on the campaign, is like the big, I guess, developer that's left there to help work on it. CloudGen, of course, is doing the cloud tech, and then Ruffian is doing the multiplayer. So you can kind of see how there are a lot of people working on it. I think if you can streamline it further and maybe you don't need the design there, then yeah, there you go. They can go on about their day or whatever else they're going to be doing outside of Crackdown, and their contract gets ran up. But Crackdown has been troubled. I like the idea of them downsizing a little bit to get this thing done, because that, honestly, some people always see it as a bad thing. They're like, oh, they just fired them because honestly, their contract might have run up, and that's actually a good thing, because that means they didn't have to sign them further to continue working. More than likely, that's the case here, and Sumo Digital is going to, I guess, take to the finish line with, of course, Ruffian and CloudGen, and I'm just ready for this to come out. Like, come on, February. Get here, February. I'm gonna be getting this. Got Kingdom Hearts. We got Anthem and Days. There's a lot of stuff happening, and then, of course, we know Nintendo's going to show up with some stuff probably in November, December with some kind of direct, and we'll probably find out there's something from them early in the year. We're talking about November, but man, February starting to fill up a bit, huh? Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for Newswave today. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, guys. It really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave a bunch of comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is Smash Bros. Ultimate on the Switch with Sakurai kind of talking about it in that interview with Famitsu, translated by Nintendo Everything. Do you think it's kind of interesting the way that they kind of had to figure out, do we want this to be a brand new entry because we're going to have to then cut back or not have as many characters, or just go all out, give people what they really want, which is a massive compilation of everyone in one shot because it takes time to develop each character, whereas if you can pull from previous entries and make one massive game, I kind of would rather that the more I think about it, right? Maybe that's just me. Also, let me think about the Media Create sales charts. Thought that was pretty interesting. Or, of course, Sony's reason being money for crossplay not being in effect. I thought that was obvious, but hey, maybe it wasn't as obvious to you or other people. Let me know what you guys think about all of this and more down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.